All right, Jeff, let's talk about 10 ways to build match confidence. And number one is to make sure that you've gone through the lists that you've got with this course, which are the clarity lists and the match prep or the tournament prep questions list, that you've gone through all of those, because part of this thing when you go out to play a match, right, Jeff, is that, I mean, confidence is about clarity.
Right.
And if you don't have clarity, I mean, you know, if you're confused with anything, we all know that, you know, the brain says no, and that's not going to build confidence. So make
Right.
sure that you've gone through these two lists and that you understand each one, and that's going to help you get clear with those lists and start to build some confidence in your matches.
Yeah. What are the controllables, and have I handled all of those? The last thing you need is to have the fact that you forgot your wristbands to actually be nagging at you in the middle of a set.
That is the worst.
Silly, but it happens. I see it when I'm playing a guy on the court next to me. I can see him having a little mini fit.
Yeah.
Because, you know, he didn't pack his, you got asking me, do I have an extra sweatband?
Right.
Really? Anyway, it can be that simple that can actually turn the corner in a match for you and you lose your way.
Number two, practice the positive stress drills that you've also got in this playbook package. And I think this is something great, Jeff, that you really stress a lot, that we don't do this enough, right? In practice. I mean, we spend way too much time on cross-court groundies, way too much time on just technique stuff, rather than creating situations in practice that really do kind of ratchet up the stress levels a little bit that we experience in our matches.
Right. You got it. And you want to be able to create that stress more often than just once in a set. You know, it takes an hour to get to 6-all down, serving 5-6 in a tiebreaker.
Right. That's right.
and you experience that for 10 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, if you haven't practiced that 10 seconds, when you finally get into a match, then, you know, it just feels so, it's like an out of body experience.
Yeah.
And you're not gonna, like I said before, you know, a confused mind says no. And we know that means that your confidence, wherever it was, is not going up.
Yeah.
Number three, don't over practice just before a league match, or don't over practice just before you leave for a tournament.
Right. Yeah. You're not gonna. It's not gonna be the tipping point that puts you over the edge.
Yeah.
You know, as you know, this being the senior singles playbook, we have to manage how much time we're spending on the court, and is that time quality time, not just quantity. And so be clear about what it is you're on the court for and how long you're going to be there for.
And plus, I think sometimes that even physically, if you feel okay, you've been just, you know, busting your butt in the practice court and playing lots of practice sets and matches, mentally you could get burned out and not really experience that, really not know that until you show up for the tournament. And the next thing you know is you're kind of lethargic. Yeah. So it's not just physical, but it's also mental as well. So what I like to do is I really like to taper down those last few days before a tournament. Not only my time in the court, but I want to feel fresh, man. When I get out there for that first match in the tournament or a league match, I want to feel like, God, I can't wait. Let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I tend to taper, you know, down a few days beforehand, and sometimes the day before a tournament, you know, if I've traveled and, you know, I'm 2 days ahead, you know, the way I like to be. And maybe the day before my first match, I do a 30, 45-minute hit. And if I feel like at that moment, I feel fresh, I feel solid, I feel strong, I feel energetic, and I feel really good about, you know, clarity, seeing the ball, who I'm playing first round, and that, I'm out. It's like, I'm done. Let's go. And I won't hang out at the club all day. I may wander around. Maybe there's some guys I want to say hi to because I haven't seen them in a while, and blah blah blah. And it's the day before, you know, the first match, and that. So I may do that a little bit, but then I'm out. I'm gonna go, you know, get in the car or whatever, and, you know, go get a bite to eat someplace else or do whatever. But anyway.
Yeah, and I think especially too, if you're working on some part of your game, and it could be more technique. You've decided, hey, I really want to clean up this part of my game, which could be a technical thing. Look, you've got to put in the practice time well before the event. You can't. This is not like cramming for an exam, because if you try to shove this new thing in, or this change that you're trying to make at the 11th hour, it's going to backfire on you. So you do the work, and whatever the work is, that's what you show up with. And if it's still not quite set in, the new thing in the tournament, a league match, that's fine. You just haven't had the time yet to be able to do enough work to where it becomes automatic. So don't panic right before the thing and go, oh my God, I got to over practice, because it's going to be a confidence killer. Jeff, you and I talked about this recently in one of our gold ball hunting podcast episodes. Is you got to know your warm up routine, and for me, it's habit building. Right? I shouldn't say it's
Right.
habit building, but it's maintaining really good habits. So in your match warm up, so lots of times tournaments, you go to the tournament desk or the league thing, and they say, you got 5 minutes, 5-minute warm up. You better know exactly to the minute what you
Right.
need to do in that warm-up routine,
Right.
so that you get your mind clear and you get organized. And it's, lots of these tournaments are 5 minutes, that's it. So
Right.
if you don't have a plan, trouble.
Right. You're planning to fail.
Yeah. And for me, my warm-up routine is really based on just a few things. Number one, it's to get my feet moving, so I'm creating spacing to the path of that incoming ball from my opponent. Even if it's a slow ball, I don't want to be sloppy. I don't want to build any sloppy habits right now, because what's to say that if you are slopping around in your 5-minute warm-up, that you're not telling your brain, hey brain, here's what we're doing today.
Right.
We're gonna slop around the footwork. No, man, just be super vigilant with your footwork, for your spacing, keeping your head down through contact, so you're not slopping, picking up your eyes too early, that kind of thing. And for me, if I'll focus on those two things, it has a nice transfer over to once the match starts, and that's a good confidence builder right there.
Yep.
Number 5, assess your opponent during the warm-up. Part of the warm-up is, as we've shown you guys as part of this package, is how to assess your opponent in the warm-up. It's crucial. Don't make everything about yourself.
Right. We got to know what we're looking at, and that takes it takes time and practice to actually be able to do this. We've given you some insight into that in part of this playbook. And you want to take it seriously, because if the one thing you pick up might be the key to success that day.
Right. That's right.
It could be a really simple thing that really alleviates a lot of stress.
Well, look, and I think that if you're really serious about becoming a better player, and this is an important part of it, is building match confidence. And one of the ways here, number 5, is to assess your opponent in the warm up. Jeff, what's to say that you can't watch some matches, whether you're at a tournament or whether you're at a league thing or even at a practice thing, where you see someone that you've never seen play before? Why can't you sit there? You're not playing it, you're off the court, but you're sort of putting yourself in one of the player's shoes and sort of trying to assess.
Yeah.
Just practicing, kind of getting a feel for it.
Yeah, well, yeah. You use those keys that we talk about in the other part of the playbook, and look for them, and kind of see, can you recognize them, and learn to recognize them, as well. And then, of course, if the guy you're playing or gal you're playing is playing at a different time and earlier in the day than you, or the day before, and you have a chance to go out and take a look, go take a look at them.
Yeah. For sure.
What are their little micro habits that maybe go unnoticed? But hey, I noticed that this happens every time they're in this situation. And so put a little extra time on this one. On assessing your opponent and learning how to do it a little more efficiently.
Number 6, and I put a star in this one, is to manage your between points time. This is like, to me, this is the thing. Number 6 is the thing that actually turned me from, number 382 in NorCal to, I don't know, one of the, one of the top guys in my age group is
Yeah,
once I
yeah,
figured out that 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 the between points time is 80% of my match.
right.
So is it sort of a period of the match where I ought to be figuring out something to do here rather than just kind of wandering around, just not knowing what to do with this part of the match?
Right. I think it's always a shocker when you explain that to people that, in an hour and a half match, an hour and 10 minutes is not playing tennis.
That's right.
You better figure out how to manage that time.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Well, look, I mean, and I think all the top players have got their own routine. I've got a
Oh,
4-part routine that I do. I know you've got something that you do,
mhm.
and I can't tell you what, look, I can certainly give you some place to start with how to manage your between points time, but everyone's got to sort of come up with their own hybridized version of what feels authentic to them. And the other thing with this is you got to practice this. Whatever you come up with a routine that you do at the end of every point, you start some kind of routine as you're getting ready for the next point. You got to practice this. This is not a light switch.
It's a skill set that needs to be practiced.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Number 7, Jeff, stay in the moment and stick to the plan. What does that mean?
That means be present. I mean, these are easy words to talk about. Being present means you're not looking to the past. You're not looking ahead to the future like, I got this. And you're sticking to the game plan and not panicking just because maybe the guy came up with an unbelievable passing shot. Stick to the plan. And that's going to help you stay in the moment, because that's where clarity is. Clarity is knowing your plan and sticking to it, even when we lose a point or two with the plan.
Yeah.
And that's just a critical, and that takes practice to get over that mental hump where you start to panic and you want to retreat back into an old habit of play that we already know is not successful, but it makes us feel warm and fuzzy inside. And
Well, look,
so this takes practice to do this.
I totally agree, and I think the other thing too, stay in the moment means that if you're up a break in the set, and how often does this happen? Someone gets up 4-1, and they can absolutely taste, and they can see, and they can feel the finish line. But I'm sorry, the finish line's still 2 games away,
Yeah,
and too often what happens is we get a lead, and we're almost hoping that
yeah,
the opponent recognizes that and starts giving us points based on the fact that we're up 1 service break. And so, look, you cannot look ahead, because looking ahead is the kiss of death.
yeah,
And so you got to stay in the moment, stick to the plan. And conversely, if you've just been up 4-1 and now you've gotten broken and the score is 4-all, well, the worst thing you can do is look back, right? You can get out of the
right.
moment and start looking back in the past, which, we can't change that. It could be that you could assess sort of a little something of what's gone on in the last 3 games and maybe make an adjustment, but you cannot look back and sort of be critical of it and sort of get down on yourself. Man, you got to stick in the
Yeah,
moment, and you got to stick to that. You got to
yeah.
stick to that plan. So
In that scenario, the first thing you have to recognize is, did I actually change without kind of knowing it? So I was
right,
up 4-1 and now it's 4-all. Did
right.
I actually get off plan without realizing it? And
Well,
that's
and
that's a
it could
moment
have
that
been
you've
the
got to
way
be
you got
clear.
off plan is that you started looking ahead.
Right, right.
So, all right, Jeff, number 8, keep your eyes inside your court.
Yeah,
For me, this is a big one because I can get wandering and start looking around, and especially if I'm distracted with maybe there's a match next to me and the players are being a little loud or something like that, or there's a car horn going off and I'm starting to look around. And And for me, if I discipline myself to just stay within the confines, the 120 by 60 confines of my court visually, it just seems that it helps me sort of maintain any confidence that I've got.
Yeah, totally. Visually that's the primary source of distraction for us, is our eyes. And so anything that happens, on the court, even and outside the court, is a temptation and a variable that can steer us, off the path. And so, keeping your eyes inside your court, which is why players tend to look at their strings or whatever it might be. And so, because visually you're keeping your eyes in a contained environment until it's time to actually lift your head, let's serve, or let's return the ball.
Right. Right. Good.
And so I tell my students to imagine that when the point's over, that when they look at their strings, that it's a notepad, and make a quick assessment of what just happened. What's my plan now? I'm going to step up, and what am I doing next?
Good. Good. Don't gauge with your opponent. Number 9. We've talked about this in some of the other videos in this course. What do you do when there's a questionable call? What do you do when there's other distractions? And I was telling you a story about, before we started the recording here, about what I thought was my first big win, which was, back in the 70s, before we had the NTRP, we had A, B, C, and I think they had D for, players who were just starting out.
Right.
And I was a B. I was, a B, and I was trying to start to play tournaments, my first year playing tournaments. And I was playing a B tournament over at Cal on some courts, 5 courts on top of a parking lot. And so anyway, I'm playing this guy who's the number 1 seed in the quarters. And the night before I played him, I told somehow I was reading this thing or watched something about how Billie Jean used to take a tennis ball at night right before she'd get into bed, have a tennis ball. She'd look at it for her match the next day. Then she'd put it on the nightstand and just go, you know what? That's all I'm looking at tomorrow. It's just a tennis ball. So I said, well, I'm going to do that tomorrow, and I'm not going to look at this number 1 seed at all, this guy, Jack. And so sure enough, I went out there next day, and he actually asked me a couple of times, hey, what's the score? And I would tell him the score across the net, but I would make sure I was looking past to the side of his face. I would not look at this guy's face. I didn't want to get any kind of personalities involved. I didn't want to get hooked into this guy. Right. And so it was incredible, Jeff. It was amazing. I did not engage with this guy at all. And there wasn't any problems with calls or anything like that. But I made sure I did not look into this guy's face once until we shook hands. And I played the best tennis of my life up to that point. I beat the number 1 seed in this tournament. And so I think it's important that we don't allow ourselves to kind of get, we've talked about, what do you do when there's questionable calls and other distractions? But I think it's easy sometimes to get sometimes those opponents are a little annoying. The calls are fine. There's nothing with a problem there. But man, there's something that's just bugging me every time I look in this guy's face.
Or it could be that they're just chatty on the changeover.
Right.
Something that simple. And you got to kind of draw a line in the sand and mind your own business. That's
right. Yeah, that's right. So look, it worked for me. And when I'm really good with number 6, which is managing my between points time, there's no part of my 4-part routine where it says, look into the guy's face. There's no part that says engage with your opponent during this 20 or 25 seconds.
Right.
And so I just think sometimes we can get caught up with personalities that we got to be careful that even if you're not saying any words, you're not talking to the opponent, is that you don't engage. So number 10, right? The Holy Grail. This is a game we're playing, guys. It's not life or death. It's not your social status for the rest of your life if you lose this thing. And it's not going to make you the man or the woman if you win this thing. So drop all that stuff and just try your best to try to, enjoy the experience.
Right. I mean, it's a game. And yes, games are fun to play and it's fun to compete. And it's fun to it's fun to be, focused and serious in the competition. But there should still be a measure of enjoyment underneath all that, that you love what you're doing. You love being there in the throes of battle and testing yourself. I mean, those are the reasons why we play,
Well, look, I mean, I think one of the big confidence killers in a match is that we put so much pressure on ourselves to win this thing or to not lose this
Right,
thing because of
right,
whatever story we're coming up with. And if you want a way to knock your confidence down, down to the ground, well, that's how you're going to do it. You're just
right.
not going to have any fun out there. And it's going to be way, way too important
Yeah,
to win, or way too important. I can't lose to this guy. Yeah.
right,
What's everyone going to think about me as a human being?
right. How much, let's say, stress and how much importance am I putting on the externals of, the team's counting on me. Oh, if I don't win my match, we're not going to sectionals, or blah blah blah. Or, all the guys are watching, and I'm supposed to beat this guy, and I'm playing, the second round of a national event, and you got to just look at it with a little bit lighter lens. And step back from it, and allow yourself to enjoy the moment. Have a little fun with it.
Bingo. Good stuff, Jeff. Thanks, man.